Your help. Please visit and donate today. sbwellness.org.
Hi,
Hey, Bridget, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Oh, the wife and I are going crazy. We're signing the closing documents for the house we're buying up at Lake Arrowhead this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, that's just the signing. Then next week, apparently, we're supposed to officially close.
Oh,
And
that's
we're trying to
fast.
get out of here, but we can't make a move until we're given the go to go.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's
gee.
just insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exciting that you're get buying
Yeah,
something,
on
but I
one
mean,
level, it's exciting, yes.
that's a quick escrow, huh?
Well, we saw the house on the 10th of August,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we made an offer on the 11th.
And it's just a lot of back and forth,
Oh
huh?
my God. Well, the owners, the sellers, uh, they couldn't make up their minds as to whether or not they were going to do the necessary repairs that were going to
Oh.
need to be done, hemming and hawing back and forth and back and forth. Hang on a second here, Richard. We are still waiting for the appraiser to. Are you? Wait a minute. The roof was completely redone. They had to repair the entire. They had to replace the roof.
Oh man.
It was done. The appraiser went out and he certified it. However, apparently, the appraiser has not signed off. But after he
Oh.
does, everything is good to go. Since we can't remove contingencies until after, then we can't negotiate an early move in until those contingencies are removed. So, most likely, your move will be next week. Of course, it will.
Well, hopefully that'll stay on track 'cause
Well, the way
gee.
things have been going, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if it didn't. It's just, and again, I'm trying not to get overly ramped up over the whole thing because that's not going to do us any good.
No, no, you
Uh,
kind of just got to go with the flow, but sometimes it's hard.
yeah. But we keep thinking because, of course, we keep looking at the pictures that we have of the place that were listed shown on Zoom or on
Yeah.
Zillow. We should have taken pictures while we were there. Is what we should have done.
Yeah, that's always a good idea because then you kind of, but yeah, it's shoulda,
But
woulda, coulda.
yeah, let's see. Hang on one second. I need to TEN dash E. So your guest, who's your guest?
There's no guest.
Okay, so what are you gonna do?
Well, Elizabeth had me go and see the exhibit at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna talk about it. So I'm just gonna solo um talk about it and I there was a guest that we were trying to get for today, but they're gonna work out next week. So yeah, it's just gonna be me. So I guess since I'm kind of gonna be in my own world, like looking at notes and things, maybe if I have to stop and kind of like recalibrate, or maybe you could just say it's time to cut because I might not be looking at you. Or should I like set a timer to kind of know
You know
about when
what?
you're
That
going to
would be
break?
good. Set a timer for 20 minutes.
Okay.
All right. And when you get down to the last 2 minutes of that, if it's a countdown timer or
Okay.
you count up, either way, 18
Yeah.
minutes, 19, so forth, then you need to make sure you look at that. And I'll try to, wave at you, what have you, hopefully. But um, yeah, the first 20 minutes, go ahead and just go straight through, then take a break. Hey, I'll continue talking about this once when we get back here on Arts and Antiques. I'm Bridget, da 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 da. And
Okay.
then reintroduce yourself when we come back. We'll do another we'll do another 10 minutes,
Okay.
20. No, actually, you can actually go 30 minutes. The first segment, 30 minutes, then 10 minutes, and then 6 minutes.
Okay. 30,
So,
10,
so
6.
let's just start with the 30. All right.
Okay.
And I'll be here. I'll be watching my clock too. Okay.
Okay. And if I have to pause, can I just yell out, I need to pause and like look at something? Because like I have like different notes and things like that. And I don't know. Like
I'll tell
is
you
that
what, you don't even need to say that. Go ahead and just pause because when I produce it, I will take those gaps out. So there isn't that silence. Okay.
okay? Sounds good.
So,
Okay.
you're chatting away, blah, 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 blah. End of statement about what you were talking about. Quiet. You look for your other piece of paper and then just continue.
Okay.
Now let's talk about blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Okay. So I just pause, take my time, and then okay.
Exactly. And then
Okay.
I will make the adjustments at my end. And if I need you to go a little longer at the very end, the last 6 minutes, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, if we're
Okay.
ready, let me start the recording, the video, so I have something to produce. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Okay. Hello, welcome to Arts and Antiques. I am Brigette Ginter, filling in for Elizabeth Stewart this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 exciting new exhibits about French Impressionism and 19th century art that are opening to the public at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art on October 5th, officially. The exhibit focuses on the Impressionists, which definitely are a crowd favorite. If you were tuning in a few weeks ago, I actually spoke to Amada Cruz, Santa Barbara Museum of Art's director, about this upcoming exhibit. So I'm very excited to share it here with all of you and that it is finally here. Today I actually was able to go to a press preview of the exhibit, and this was exciting and informative as well as inspiring. So here on today's episode, I wanted to talk to you all a bit about Impressionism, this exhibit, and why it matters and why you should all go. I also wanted to go over a few pieces that resonated with me and also go into some more depth about some of the artists and their contributions to the history of art. So for those of you that are tuning in, my name is Brigette Ginter, and I work with Elizabeth as an assistant in her appraisal business. I have a master's in art history and have worked in museums as well as in education. I also have an art history podcast called the Blank Canvas Podcast, which I actually started during COVID and got a bit over my head in the project. And now I have 2 small kids, so I have even less time. But regardless, I have lots of different art hats. And today I'm excited to be wearing the hat of art historian and storyteller and inspire all of you to visit the Santa Barbara Museum of Art this fall. So, as mentioned, this exhibit opens on October 5th to the public. And it's actually 2 exhibits that are offered in conjunction together. The first exhibit is the Impressionist Revolution from Monet to Matisse, and it is from the Dallas Museum of Art collection. And it explores the so-called rebellious origins of the independent artist collective known as the Impressionists and the revolutionary course they charted for modern art. The exhibit has a rich array of paintings, including exquisite examples by Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, Paul Gauguin, Henri Matisse, Piet Mondrian, Berthe Morisot, and Edward Munch. And so that is the first part of the exhibit. And then the second part of the exhibit is Encore, which is 19th century French art from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. And this has more than 40 works of art on view. And this is told just through the collection of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. it has a variety of painting, photographs, as well as different ephemera like posters, postcards, etc. And what was really cool about this exhibit is that it takes you on kind of a tour of Parisian sites like the Notre Dame, the Eiffel Tower, the French Riviera, the cliffs of Normandy, countryside, and it shows you the different places that all these artists traveled. A lot of the Impressionists traveled to London, the Netherlands, that's where Van Gogh famously painted, and then even Germany. So it really showcases all the unique holdings from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art that include, as mentioned, photography, painting, a bit of sculpture from the period, and really showcases some diversity in the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, what they have. Another part that I thought was really neat about this exhibit is it has a short video that accompanies the sort of beginning of the exhibit, and it shows in this video a lot of works of art that weren't able to be on display. So I thought that was a nice little touch. So today I got to do the press preview, as mentioned, and Dr. Nicole Myers, actually, she is the senior curator of the Dallas Museum of Art. She walked us through the Impressionist Revolution portion of the exhibit. And as mentioned, the name of this exhibit is Monet to Matisse. And the overall thesis of this exhibit really centers around the idea that the Impressionists were not necessarily, so nowadays we kind of think of Impressionism as a style of art, but Impressionism actually was not a style as we think of it today. They were actually just a group of diverse artists that had very different ideas, but they did come together with some shared values and interests. And these shared values include their radical approach to painting new subject matter that wasn't previously given much attention. They also had this interest in light and the play of light across the canvas, how to depict the shift in light in a new way, and also trying to basically just do things in a new way and break with the old traditions of the Royal Academy. So this exhibit, Monet to Matisse, is told entirely through the holdings of the Dallas Museum of Art. So that was really neat to see what paintings the Dallas Museum of Art have. The Impressionists really broke with tradition in not only how they painted, but also they redefined what constituted contemporary art that we think of today. So when you think about it, Impressionism can kind of be seen as the basis for all modern art. So we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit today. And their unique innovations of the core members of the Impressionists, who we think of Impressionists are Monet, Edgar Degas, even Berthe Morisot. They set a foundation which followed different generations of avant-garde artists, and they all sort of started reacting to one another. So we can kind of think about artists as constantly being in dialogue with one another. So they're constantly responding to one another through art. And we really see that dialogue between artists in this exhibit, which is very cool. We also see works of art by Gauguin, which I'll talk about, and Van Gogh, as well as Mondrian and Matisse. And another unique thing about this exhibit it actually was organized for the 150th anniversary of the first Impressionist exhibition, which took place in 1874. When we first step into the exhibit, we see Claude Monet's Pont Neuf from 1871. And I thought that was a really great way to open the exhibit. It shows, for those of you that go and see it, it really shows the industrialization and modern life that was Paris at this time. This work of art has a lot of the things we think of as being impressionist, which are visible brush strokes, as I mentioned, this emphasis on modernization, new subject matter, which the subject matter is a cityscape of people walking around Paris. You can see the steam coming from the steamboats because it's the Pont Neuf, so it's a bridge in Paris, and you can see the steamboats going underneath the bridge. And the people, as they walk across the bridge, just kind of look like generalized sort of people. So we don't see necessarily realistic renditions of hands and feet, etc. They're sort of like, I wouldn't quite say blobs, but it's sort of like you get the general, what I would say, impression that people are crossing the bridge. So here's where we sort of get our jumping off point, and we get a taste of what Impressionism was kind of trying to do. So who were the Impressionists? Let's talk a little bit more about that. For those of you that don't know the Impressionists, they were a group, for a lack of better word, of rebel artists that decided to take on the Paris Salon. And what I really liked about the Dallas Museum of Art curator, Dr. Nicole Myers, is she said these artists really were, I believe she used the word rebel. And I like that word because they were doing something that was kind of, I would say, very bold. You could use other terms for it, but bold, definitely. So the Paris Salon, for those of you who don't know, the Salon served as Paris's premier place for art exhibition. And it was organized by the prestigious Académie Royale de Peinture et Sculpture, which is the Royal Academy of Painting and of Sculpture. And it was led by a specific jury with the power to pick and choose what work was worth showing. And this was an annual event that could make or break an artist's career. So it was organized by often professors and people in power that sort of dictated what was important art and what was not important for the public to see. And a lot of these works of art had to have some kind of didactic purpose. So a history painting, a painting of, say, Emperor Napoleon, a painting from the Bible, something like that. Something that was supposed to either elevate or teach its audience. So the Royal Academy had a profound effect on European art as a whole, and it also enabled an elite organization to dictate the definition of what was art. So for those of you that didn't think Impressionism was political, think again. Now we think of it as just a beautiful, for example, Monet's water lily, something pretty that you can see on a mug, right? It wasn't just that; it was a bold political statement. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the salon, the Parisian salon, was the establishment, and the establishment dictated what kind of art was appropriate and what kind of art was inappropriate. And for many years, the salon was what called the shots. Works of art that were selected by the salon were often conservative, conventional, and often involved some kind of historical, mythological, or allegorical scenes, as well as portraiture. And it was always in a realistic style. So you wouldn't have something like Monet's water lilies, to mention something we've already seen, talked about, excuse me. The Academy's traditional taste was accepted until the 19th century, when increasingly a number of artists began embracing the avant-garde. And we kind of see that with the beginning of realism and artists like Gustave Courbet. So that's kind of where we first start to see a break with the Royal Academy. And often the Academy would reject most modern pieces. But some artists kind of managed to toe the line and secure a spot. Most famously, Edouard Manet's Olympia, which is a nude depiction of a prostitute with her handmaid that is Black. Some of you may or may not know that work of art. This was actually accepted by the Salon in 1863, and it probably was accepted because Manet was an elite painter that had his own money that he was able to bring to the table, and it is done in a realistic style. So although the subject matter is scandalous, it was done in a realistic way. So in 1863, we also have the development of something called the Salon des Refusés, or the Salon of the Refused. And this is where it actually was not a band of disgruntled artists. It was actually put on by Emperor Napoleon III, and it was viewed as a way to appease those artists that were upset with the limited works of art selected by the Salon. So this was kind of the first sort of break in Salon mentality. And the quote is that numerous complaints have come to the emperor on the subject of the works of art which were refused by the jury of the exposition. His Majesty, wishing to let the public judge the legitimacy of these complaints, has decided that the works of art which were refused should be displayed in another part of the palace. So this is kind of the first, you could say, bone that's thrown. But as mentioned, Olympia by Manet was accepted that year. So this was kind of like the first year that we're sort of seeing some possible break with tradition. So many pieces that were presented in the Salon des Refusés are considered masterpieces now. And one of those masterpieces is, again, by Manet, Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe, which is now in the Musée d'Orsay. And this is, the English title is Luncheon on the Grass. And this has two well-dressed, wealthy gentlemen that are sitting, having lunch on the grass with two prostitutes that are nude. So we kind of have this break, and part of this is a break, kind of thought of as a break in morality, right? So in 1874, which is 11 years after the Salon des Refusés, the Impressionists decided that they had had enough, and they decided they did not need the Salon to, and they also didn't need the Salon des Refusés in order to exhibit. So they came together as something called the Société Anonyme Coopérative de Peinture, Artistes, Sculpteurs et Graveurs, which is the cooperative and anonymous association of sculptors, painters, and engravers. And they first had their independent exhibition. And they skipped submission to the Salon altogether. They decided to charge an entrance fee, and they decided to figure out where they were going to exhibit their works. And they found a place which was the studio of a contemporary French photographer named Nadar. And there is a photograph of him in this exhibit, which I'll talk about a little later. But this first Impressionist exhibition had 30 artists, including Monet, Renoir, and Edgar Degas, as well as Camille Pissarro. And among these works that were exhibited were Monet's Impression Sunrise. And this is a landmark painting for those of you that have heard of it. And this is how Impressionism got its name. Monet claimed that the title Impression Sunrise was due to the hazy style. And they asked me for a title for the catalog, and he couldn't really give it the name of what it depicted, which was a port in France. So he said put impression. So that was his explanation of what the work of art depicted. It wasn't a sunrise, it was an impression of a sunrise. Impressionists favored painting outdoors, which they called en plein air. And they favored these new subject matters and depictures of modern life. And this includes genre scenes, domestic scenes, and landscapes. Note, not history paintings. One of my favorite works, as well as one of the curator's favorite works, was by the artist Gustave Caillebotte. And it's a really interesting work of landscape called The Path in the Garden from 1886. And what I thought was really interesting about this work of art is that it shows the development of color theory and contrast. And what was pointed out was this idea that if you go and see it, it's really a remarkable work of art. It's very vibrant. And the artist puts together red with green, which are opposites. And it kind of creates this sort of vibrational effect of light and vibrancy, so that it almost feels like the painting is sort of moving. You can see this light and shade and shadow. And part of this new tradition of painting came from the fact that artists could now take their paints outside, which that's how you get the name en plein air, outside. So the artists were painting outside. And this is from the invention of paint that actually came in a tube. So it made paints portable. And prior to this, paints actually had to be specifically ground up in a studio setting and mixed with a binder. And then in order to become portable, it would have to be stored in some kind of canister, often a pig's bladder, that then they could puncture and squeeze some of the bladder, some of the paint out of, in order to make it portable. And as you can imagine, this could get quite messy, and pigments for paint are very expensive. So it became quite hazardous, and not everyone could do it. So when you have the invention of paint that actually comes in a tube, it becomes sort of more of an equalizer. More people have access to the paints. It's not just for artists that are learning in a studio setting. So we have these artists, these impressionists that are banding together, exhibiting, and the the exhibition sort of tells the story of the Impressionists that exhibited, and I believe I would have to double check, but I believe there were, let me see. So the Impressionist exhibited 8 exhibitions between 1874 and 1886. And what I found interesting as well as that it was not always the same artist that exhibited. So Monet did not always exhibit. Um, Pissarro did not always exhibit. It sort of changed from year to year who was exhibiting. So they exhibited 8 times, and then Impressionism kind of goes through what we would call a crisis, and the exhibit sort of addresses this crisis. We talk about the fact that many artists decide that Impressionism is kind of too much of the moment, and artists decide to push new boundaries. And this is kind of the beginning of a lot of post-Impressionist movements. And these were inspired often by one of these most famous post-Impressionist movements is pointillism, which was inspired by the artist Seurat. Unfortunately, there are no works of art by Seurat in this exhibit, but there are works of art by his followers, which were Camille Pissarro and Paul Signac. And one of my personal favorites from this exhibit is Mont Saint-Michel in the Setting Sun by Paul Signac. And you can see the pointillism, which is derived from color theory, and you can see the individual dots and opposing colors that come together to create a visual representation when you step away. And when you look at it up close, you see all the individual dots. It's really quite beautiful. You also see the effects of light, and the sky is this gorgeous sort of cotton candy pink and cotton candy blue. It almost looks like a sort of fairy tale castle, sort of like floating in the clouds. I think my daughter would really love this painting, but if when you go to the exhibit, please go and just stand in front of this work of art, because it's really breathtaking to think all the different individual dots that were placed in order to create this gorgeous view. The exhibit also ends by pointing out the fact that Impressionism really paved the way for many modern art movements. And often we know these as isms. So some of the isms are Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Symbolism. And it features 2 works of art by Gauguin. And in addition to his friend and fellow symbolist, Paul Bernard. I have, and the curator of the Dallas Museum of Art, Dr. Myers, she mentioned sort of this difficult battle that we can have with Gauguin and his legacy. And what's interesting about Gauguin is that he sort of had one foot in with the Impressionists and one foot out. Or I believe she used the word, he had his foot in both camps. So Gauguin had this personal ideal of finding authenticity within art. So he sort of, and going back to this idea of the crisis within Impressionism, he felt as if Paris and the whole art scene there had sort of become tainted, and tainted by modernity, and he wanted to find a simple, pure existence where society had not touched, or where no one had touched society. And it is from there that he travels to Brittany with Paul Bernard. And there's one really exceptional work by Bernard of his time in Brittany, but then it's also paired with a work of art by Paul Gauguin, and it's called Under the Pandanus Tree, that's a type of Tahitian tree, and it's from his time in French Polynesia, which, again, sort of going back to his legacy of he was with the Impressionists, left to find a more pure existence, and spent the rest of his days in Tahiti and left his family in order to find this new artistic mission of finding meaning. So I'm going to take a short break at this point, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about this exhibit, and the two exhibits that are at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art coming October 5th. And again, I am Brigette Ginter, filling in for Elizabeth Stewart on Arts and Antiques this afternoon. We'll take a short break.
3, 2, 1, you're live.
Hello, welcome back to Arts and Antiques. I am Brigette Ginter, filling in for Elizabeth Stewart this afternoon. Today we are talking a little bit about these two exciting new exhibits about French Impressionism and 19th century art that is opening to the public at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art on October 5th. For those of you that are just tuning in, my name is Brigette Ginter, and I work with Elizabeth as an assistant in her appraisal business. I am an art historian and have worked in museums as well as education. And today we are talking about these two wonderful exhibits. One, Monet to Matisse, which are works of art from the Dallas Museum of Art. It is told entirely through the exceptional holdings of the Dallas Museum of Art, and it tells the story of Impressionism and Impressionism as the basis for modern art. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this exhibit, and then I'm also going to touch on the works of art that are at the second part of the exhibit, which is called Encore, and this is told through the holdings of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. So before the break, I was talking a little bit about the crisis in Impressionism and the artist Paul Gauguin that was looking for a more pure form of existence that he wanted to depict through his art. The final room of the exhibit, Monet to Matisse, really, for me, was a real highlight in the entire exhibit. This showed a lot of artists such as Edvard Munch, who we think of as the expressionist that famously painted The Scream, and also the artist Piet Mondrian, who Mondrian, for those of you that don't know, he is known for these grid-like works of art using primary colors and right angles, which he thought had a sort of perfect harmony and relationship between the two extremes. So he used color theory in a different way. So one work of art that is by Mondrian, you wouldn't not even know that it was by Mondrian. It is called the Winkle Mill, and it's a windmill, and it's a pointillist version, and it shows the influence on Impressionism and post-Impressionism. And there's another work of art, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it uses really vibrant greens and reds, and you can see the influence of Van Gogh. So it's really fascinating how all of these artists that we think of as a certain way were so profoundly influenced by the Impressionists. So I highly recommend you go and take a look at this, especially this final room. It's a real sort of grand finale, I would say. There's also some work by Andre Duran, who's a favorite of mine. And the final work is a work of art by Matisse, which is quite confusing to look at. It's sort of, you don't quite know what is the wall, what is the table, what is what. So I encourage you to go and stare at that for a while and see what you think you see. So showing this work, this exhibit really shows the roots of all modern art leading back to Impressionism and the beginnings of abstraction, which was really, really well thought out. I highly encourage you to go. I'm going to switch gears because then we saw the exhibit that accompanies it, which is specifically works of art from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art holdings. And it is called, as mentioned, Encore. And it is 19th century French art from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art and has more than 40 artworks on view. And it uses paintings, photographs, and takes you on a visual tour of Parisian sites, from the Notre Dame to the Eiffel Tower, the French Riviera, the cliffs of Normandy, countryside farms, and takes you to places that artists traveled, such as London, the Netherlands, and Germany. And it has photographs, painting, and sculpture from the period, which really highlights the diversity of the Museum of Art holdings. When you enter the exhibit, one thing that I thought was really neat is that it has this giant mural of the Eiffel Tower. Well, it's not quite a mural; it's a photograph, but it's blown up from Paris in the 19th century, and it also has a pink map of Paris during this time, which really got my attention. And I mean, who doesn't love Paris? It was beautiful. So the really, I would say the crux of this exhibit is sort of talking about how photography becomes an industry and influences visual culture and commerce. And this all sort of circles back to this photograph, which is on the wall as you come into the exhibit, and it is a photograph of the photographer Nadar, who, as mentioned, it was in his studio that the first Impressionist exhibit was displayed. Nadar was a very interesting character. He was a bohemian writer, a journalist, and he also was known for his interest in balloons, and aeronautics. So Nadar was not his real name. His real name was Felix. I'm not quite sure how he got the nickname Nadar, but he features as you enter the exhibit. And then there's some really neat ephemera from Montmartre. So there's some posters. There's a poster that is advertising for the Moulin de la Galette, which that was a famous sort of night spot that is also in a famous Renoir painting, the Moulin de la Galette. There's some pictures of can-can dancers and just some really neat, as mentioned, ephemera. So sort of highlighting the importance of the mundane and things that artists and bohemian writers, etc., would see in their everyday life. So I thought that was really, really neat. So it starts with Montmartre, and then it sort of branches off into different areas of not only Paris, but also the sort of outer reaches of where artists would go in to paint and to find their inspiration as Impressionists in the 19th century. We are going to take a short break again. My name is Brigette Ginter, and again, I am filling in for Elizabeth Stewart this afternoon, and we're talking about the 2 new exhibits at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art that are opening October 5th.
All right, 6 minutes is all we need. In 3.
Okay, let me try to.
Okay, 3.
Okay, I hope it's going good.
It's going fine. You're doing great. And thank you for putting those breaks in. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Okay. Hello, welcome back to Arts and Antiques. I am Brigette Ginter, filling in for Elizabeth Stewart this afternoon. We're talking about a few new exciting exhibits that are often offered at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art coming October 5th. They are both in relation to French Impressionism and 19th century art. The first is the Impressionist Revolution, Monet to Matisse, which features holdings from the Dallas Museum of Art. And the second is Encore, which is 19th century French art, which features works of art solely from the holdings of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. I talked a little bit about the roots of Impressionism and my feelings about how fabulous these 2 shows are. And I went into some depth about the Dallas Museum of Art portion of the exhibit. And now I've been wrapping up by talking a little bit about the works of art from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art portion. I talked a little bit about how the exhibit starts in Paris and the influence of Bohemian culture, which for those of you that liked the movie Moulin Rouge, I know it's old, but or have gone to Paris and know Montmartre. That was the artist district. That's where all the artists hung out and would sort of get inspired from one another. And then the exhibit moves to other areas of Paris, so Notre Dame. And then it sort of moves to the French countryside called the Outer Reaches, as well as Normandy. And one of the works that I personally responded to, well, there were 2 different works of art by the artist Marceau. And she is one of a few but mighty female impressionists. And if we think of the Impressionists as rebels, you can think about female Impressionists as the ultimate rebels. That Marceau was is interesting because she actually was Manet's sister-in-law. She was married to Manet's brother Eugene. And in this exhibit, she has 2 works of art, and they both have to do with family and domesticity. One is young girl hanging a bird cage in a tree from 1890, which features her daughter, Julie. And then another one is, I believe, the other is On the Beach at Fécamp, which is Sur la plage de Fécamp. And it is from 1874, and it is from when she is recently engaged to Manet's brother. And the curator pointed out that it's very interesting. The work of art is signed, and it's signed Manet, which would be her new last name. And the curator pointed out that she often did not sign her works of art. So you kind of wonder, why is this one signed? Was it signed after the fact? And I keep thinking it's very interesting, this work of art, because she's depicting a woman with her children on the beach, but the woman is dressed completely in black, which was chic for the day, but also seems very inappropriate given the beach setting. And she also has like a black veil. So part of me wants to do some more research in depth about this work. The exhibit ends talking about London and more of the outer reaches of Impressionism, which Monet famously spent a lot of time in London. And it has two works of art side by side, Monet's Charing Cross Bridge and Monet's Waterloo Bridge, which both have these, again, epitome of Impressionism, sort of the emphasis on light, loose brush strokes, visible brush strokes, just really fun, really inspiring to see them side by side. I can't recommend going to this exhibit, these two exhibits, enough. It was a real treat to get walked through with the curators. And I hope all of you that are able to go see this. I know this opening weekend, there will be a First Impression Paris by Night celebration, which will be Saturday, October 4th from 5:30 to 7:30, which will have some early access, but I believe you have to have tickets for that. There's a member preview morning, which is Sunday, October 5th. And the exhibit's officially open to the public on October 5th. Thank you so much to everyone who is listening. Again, this is Brigette Ginter filling in for Elizabeth Stewart this afternoon on Arts and Antiques. Please go see the Impressionist exhibits at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. Thank you for listening.